Morning, everybody. This morning, I'm doing a chat that's kind of out of character, really. It's really a tribute to somebody. I've never done one before, but it seems like the thing I want to do this morning. I found out that my dearest and most beloved mentor from college has COVID-19. And she's older. She's a nun. Her name is Sister Barbara. And she was my most influential teacher. And she gave me gifts and wisdom that, I don't know, I just think it's worth passing on. And maybe you'll find it useful. I don't know. But I'll tell you, I met her freshman year. And when I arrived at school, we had to take religion classes. And I arrived with the idea that, you didn't have to study religion, and but you had to take a class. So Barbara's class, I arrived there, and I wasn't exactly interested in taking another religion class. So we didn't get off to the best start. And then she stopped me in the hall. And Barbara didn't walk, she glided. And she said to me, "You have a very good mind. It's a pity no one's taught you how to use it." And then she kept going. And I thought, I was astounded. But what really astounded me, was that I thought I should be embarrassed. I should be humiliated. But I wasn't. I thought I was inspired. I thought, how did she do that? How did she do that? How could I be inspired when I should be, in fact, embarrassed? But I wasn't. The second thing was, one day she came in, and this was a class on Eastern religions. She comes in and she says, "Today I'm going to teach you girls to concentrate." So we took out our pencils, and she takes a deep breath, closes her eyes, and goes away. Just goes away. And we all looked at her. And the other students in the class were all like, what's the matter with Sister Barbara? But I was fascinated. I thought, where did she go? Where did she go? And then she woke up. She came back an hour later, and she said, "There, that's deep concentration." And she walked out. She walked out. She announced the first day of class. She said, "My commitment, my vow, is to pass on knowledge. Whether or not you like me is of no consequence. And number 2, I don't want to hear any of you quote me a year from now. Because a year from now, I may not believe the same things I do today, because I am in constant dialogue with God. And I may learn something through revelation between now and then." Who talks like that? Who talks like that? Constant dialogue with God. Constant dialogue with God. I thought, who is this woman who talks like that, who lives like that? She mesmerized me. I ended up taking every class she taught. Every class she taught. She gave an example one time. What is truth? What is truth? She said, you take the south of a building, south corner. You take the west, you take the east, you take the north. And the building burns. Now come back and tell me the story of the building. And which of you has the truth of what happened? The person on the north, the south, the east, or the west? And that was so mind-boggling to me, so utterly mind-boggling to me. So we all got into this discussion of, well, perspective, and she said, She said, what about the building itself? Doesn't the building have a story to tell? She said, isn't the ultimate story the one the building has to tell? Doesn't the building, isn't it that the only vessel that knows who's lived on every floor, who put the bricks in, who the tuck pointers were, the story of every single person? You can never know the truth. Her perspective on truth just exploded in my head, that we are incapable of ever knowing truth at the cosmic level. Then, in one class, she took us individually. This class only had 3 students. Can you imagine? That's the size of my college. And she took us one at a time, and we went to a hermitage. We weren't allowed to bring our watches or anything. Of course, we didn't have phones then. We had typewriters when I was in college. And so we woke up. She would wake you up in the middle of the night and put you in a yoga position. And the image that she gave you was to be in the center of a wheel. This later became the template for sacred contracts for me. And each of the spokes had a different perspective on God and reality. A different perspective on God and reality. I'll never get the camera thing straight, so forgive me. And she would say, would ask a question. What is the nature of how you see suffering? Speak to me as a Christian. Speak to me as a Buddhist. And she would say, spin that wheel. If you had to forgive someone for an injustice, speak to me from a Jewish perspective. Speak to me as though you were from Islam. Spin that wheel. And if she sensed you becoming defensive or taking a position from more, this was right, as opposed to another position, you failed the class. Because the object was to understand a perspective without attachment, was to go for the truth of that perspective without attachment, to go for the truth and see that each truth had value. She would say, spin the wheel, and it would go here. If you were attached and became defensive, you failed. You failed. You had to do this in a yoga position. She was magnificent. She took me apart and resculpted me. I never wanted to be a teacher. Never. But when I found myself becoming one, she was my guide. How she taught. She said, I asked her one time, after I graduated, I said, why did you become a nun? She said, oh, some people are called to love one person. Some people are called to love many. I hated that answer for all kinds of reasons. I hated that answer. She was so magnificent. So magnificent. When I later became a teacher, everything about how she practiced detachment and her capacity to see the gifts in people became my greatest tool. And I believe it became my tool to becoming a good medical intuitive and to seeing the gifts in others. She was so clear about her belief that the passing on of knowledge and the awakening of the gifts in a human being was one of the greatest callings in life. To awaken the gifts in a human being. That, that each human being has so many treasures in their soul, and that sometimes they need to be shaken. You have to shake those treasures, because honestly, sometimes the treasures you have in you are so powerful that some part of you knows that if I open this treasure box, I will change my world. And if I change my world, I'll change the world of people around me. And that will shake the ground beneath my feet. Sensing the gifts in people. And when I sense the treasures in someone, it's taken me a long, long time to not want to just scream at people and say, get rid of that fear. The gifts in your soul are so powerful, but it's hard for people. It's hard for you. It's hard to believe, to touch the power of your soul. I get that. I'm now to the stage in my life where I truly get that we've become so involved, so accustomed to the world we can touch and smell and taste, that it's so much more real for us, so much more real than this world of the soul. That it's hard to believe, it's hard to imagine, it's hard to grasp that the world of the soul is the real one. It's how does someone cross that Rubicon and get that the power of your inner world has the capacity to alter the outside world, that's the real power, that the mustard seed in you can bring down the mountain? How does that make sense? How do you cross that and begin to touch that? But I think that's the challenge of our time. I truly believe that is the great challenge of our time, that somehow the power of our inner nature is what we need to understand now as the external world is erupting. That's causing us to enter such chaos that we have to go for instruction on the inside. We have to. We just have to. And I know that it is the inside of us, the interior, that will speak to us. And that voice, that interior instruction is so clear. And I know for many people, that's not a world they're that familiar with trusting. And those tracks need to be laid. You have to understand how the dark night works, and and how guidance works, and how to begin to trust that part of yourself over external instincts, and what it is to perceive rather than see, what it is to sense rather than listen, how these two work together, how your soul's language works in harmony with your intellectual language. But it's time for that marriage of forces to happen. I'm going to be teaching my last section of the Phoenix, on the soul, on the power of your soul, the language of your soul. This is the whole myth of the Phoenix, that when something burns, out of the ashes comes the next phase, the next strength of you. And this is a collective Phoenix falling. And I believe this is the next era. We've been primed for an intuitive awakening. And I think that's what's happening. This has been coming for a long time. But as I sculpt this class, it's Barbara who's in my mind, and the way she taught me, and the wisdom she gave to me. And that's what's motivating my desire to pass on to you all that was given to me. Sometimes we have to, I think, honor the great teachers of our lives. It's such a gift to have been taught by masters, and I was taught by one. I was. I hope this was not too personal. I apologize for that. But she is coping with COVID. And I wish you all well, and I hold you in my prayers, and I hold you in grace. And hold that prayer. Hover over me, God. That is such a powerful prayer. My book on prayer will come out later in September. And it's a new one for me. And even in that book, I thought of Barbara, because it was a struggle for me to put out this book. It's like a book. It's like a prayer journal. It's my prayer diary. And I had to fight to let this one out, because, again, like this, it was deeply personal, but it seemed like the thing to do. So, from my heart to yours today, thank you for listening.